Chapter 17. The night air offered little solace. Despite the exhaustion that gnawed at his bones, Dante found sleep elusive. The gruesome images of the dead soldiers replayed in his mind were vivid and unforgiving. He tossed and turned on his bedroll, a gnawing unease that had taken root in his gut. Finally, he pushed himself up, pulling on his travel cloak. The camp was settling, but a few sentries still paced, their silhouettes stark against the small, flickering campfires. He needed to talk to Amedria. She was the only one he felt even remotely comfortable with and seemed capable enough. He found her by the remains of the main fire, meticulously sharpening her sword.
"Captain,"
Dante said, his voice low, betraying the turmoil within him. Amedria looked up, her eyes tired but sharp.
"Prince, couldn't sleep either?"
He moved closer, glancing around to ensure their conversation wouldn't be easily overheard.
"It's a little more than that, Amedria. It's the Beast Woman from Rourke's party."
Amedria paused her sharpening and looked at Dante with a steady gaze.
"What about her?"
"I'm sure she's the assassin.
Dante said in a hushed tone.
I saw her during the fight. She used that young recruit as a shield, let the troll kill him, and I saw her put something on her dagger. She had a small blue and viscous vial. I'm sure it was poison."
Amedria's brow furrowed, a slow shake of her head accompanying her sigh.
"Prince, I know it was a brutal fight. You're exhausted, shaken. Your magic, it unleashed a lot out of you, and it must have taken a toll on you mentally.
Her voice was soft, almost placating.
But accusing one of our own, without any solid proof, is a lot to ask for. The battle earlier was quite stressful, and people can see things that aren't real when they are under pressure and have a lot of adrenaline going through them. Soldiers use all sorts of tricks when fighting to survive. It was a blur of events. You were under pressure. You also seem to be naturally paranoid, which is not a bad thing, but can be too much in large doses. Prince Dante, maybe you should try to let this whole series of coincidences go. It's getting the better of you."
The words hit Dante like a slap. Paranoia, coincidences. The one person he thought might truly listen was dismissing him as if he were a scared child. A raw surge of hot anger erupted inside him. He felt his insides churn with his fury.
"Useless idiot."
Dante snapped, his voice rising, crackling with a faint, unheard static.
"I'm not paranoid. I saw what I saw. You're just too blind to see it. You're useless if you can't even see the obvious threats right in front of you."
Amedria's eyes hardened, a flicker of hurt crossing her face before a rigid mask of professional discipline replaced it. She rose slowly, sheathing her sword with a definitive click.
"With all due respect, Your Majesty, I am at my post, doing my duty. Perhaps you should return to your tent and rest. We have a long journey ahead."
Dante saw her eyes go dead inside, and it made Dante even more furious, and a small part of him felt hurt. The dismissal stung, a bitter taste in Dante's mouth. He clenched his fists, fighting the urge to say something more hurtful, to get more of a reaction. He turned abruptly, stalking back towards his tent, the perceived betrayal from Amedria a fresh wound. He had finally tried to open up and talk to someone about something on his mind, and she had met it with skepticism and dismissal. Everyone's the same, he thought, a familiar resentment curdling in his chest.
"No one understands me. No one gives a fuck."
He threw himself onto his bedroll, the anger still beating hot beneath his skin. Sleep finally came, but it was anything but restful. In his dreams, he was a rabbit, small and vulnerable, his heart hammering against his ribs, bursting with a desperate fear. The world was vast and terrifying. He found himself in a forest, and every rustle of leaves or snapped twig was a potential harbinger of death. He felt something chasing him, relentless and silent. He didn't have to see it to know it was her, the Beast Woman. Her face was filled with predatory delight. He didn't have to turn around to see her easily closing the gap between them and her eyes gleaming with wicked amusement. He scrambled, he dug, and ran until his tiny lungs burned like fire, but she was always there, her shadow eclipsing him, her claws outstretched, ready to grab. The air grew cold, reeking of death, and heavy with an unseen presence. Then her laugh, a chilling and guttural sound, echoed through the trees, slowly closing in. He darted through a dense thicket and branches tearing at his fur, but he knew it was futile. There was no escape. Dante woke with a gasp, his eyes snapping open to the inky blackness of his tent. His heart pounded against his ribs, mirroring the frantic rhythm of his dream self. He tried to push himself up, but his muscles wouldn't obey. A cold dread seeped into him. He tried to speak or shout, but only a choked, wheezing sound escaped his lips. His tongue felt thick and useless. A shadow detached itself from the gloom at the foot of his bedroll. A tall, slender figure emerged. It was the beast woman. She smiled, a slow, predatory curve of her lips that made Dante's blood run cold. In the faint light that filtered through the tent flap, he saw the wicked gleam in her eyes.
"Good evening, Prince Dante,"
she whispered, her voice a low, raspy purr that somehow magnified the terror.
"Or perhaps, good morning. You've been quite busy sleeping."
She moved closer. Her movements were fluid like a predator stalking prey. Dante stared up, utterly helpless as his mind raced. He was screaming at his body to move, but it lay unresponsive. He could feel ropes now, tight around his wrists and ankles, though he hadn't felt her bind him.
"You're already paralyzed, Prince."
She explained, her voice conversational, as if discussing the weather.
"I gave you a small taste of a paralytic poison as you slept. I'm quite good at calculating dosages. It just takes a little while to spread through your body. The ropes are merely a precaution, of course, for my peace of mind."
She chuckled. She knelt beside him, her face inches from his. Her eyes glittered, reflecting the small light that was illuminating the room.
"You're an unwanted prince. You're in somebody's way. No. My job is simply to help get you out of the way."
Unwanted? In the way?
The words echoed in Dante's mind, replaying over and over. His thoughts, frantic and disjointed, searched his memories of anyone he may have wronged before his mind settled on an unforgiving thought.
Did my father? No. Did King Hawthorne?
A chilling possibility, a grotesque betrayal, solidified in his mind.
Did he hire this assassin? Was this entire journey, this caravan, this growing experience, just a setup to make it easier to get rid of me?
A bitter, agonizing pain, far worse than any physical discomfort, twisted in his gut. The anger of the profound sense of abandonment flared hot in his soul. The beast woman rose casually, effortlessly. She bent down, and before Dante could even process her intention, she picked him up, not with strain or difficulty, but with the ease of someone lifting a kitten. Her strength alone was worrisome, terrifying in its casual display. She lifted the tent flap, and with a few silent, graceful steps, sneaked out of the camp. Dante lay cradled in her arms. The night was clear, a blanket of distant stars twinkling above. No one stirred or noticed. The sentries walked their posts, oblivious. Dante struggled in a desperate internal fight against the paralyzing poison. He couldn't move, or couldn't speak, but his mind was a churning cauldron of fear, anger, and betrayal. His mana well was now becoming a chaotic ocean within him, as he felt his raw, overwhelming emotions smashed around like a tide against a cliffside. A storm of emotions brewed within as the thoughts he had toward his situation intensified. He was angry at his father, terrified of the beast woman, furious at his helplessness. His chest and arms started to glow a faint purple where his scars were. Then, on the clear night, without a whisper of wind, the air began to churn. A deep and ominous low rumble vibrated through the ground. The stars above flickered, then vanished behind rapidly swirling clouds that materialized out of nowhere. Within seconds, a howling gale tore through the camp, whipping tents into frantic sails, extinguishing campfires with furious gusts, and sending dust and debris swirling. Rain hammered down thick and relentlessly, and instantly drenched everything. A hurricane appeared as if conjured from thin air. It was wild and unpredictable, a perfect manifestation of Dante's unleashed, uncontrolled despair. The camp erupted into chaos. Soldiers, roused from sleep, stumbled out of their tents, yelling, convinced they were under attack. Panicked horses whinnied and bucked. The wind shrieked like a banshee, tearing through the gorge, creating an unbearable howling wind. Amedria, already awake and alert from her earlier exchange with Dante, felt the sudden, impossible shift in the weather. She stood up with her mind racing on figuring out what happened.
A clear night to a hurricane in seconds? This wasn't natural. It was magic. Chaotic magic!
Her eyes snapped to where Dante's tent had been. It was now a tattered mess, flattened by the inexplicable winds.
Prince Dante!
She roared, fighting against the gale, her voice barely audible. She dashed to the space, finding only shredded canvas and a cold, empty bedroll. He was gone.
The prince is missing!
Amedria bellowed, her voice cutting through the pandemonium with the force of command.
Form up! Search the perimeter! Find the prince!
As the remaining soldiers, a mere handful compared to their starting numbers, struggled to regain order amidst the storm, a new shadow detached itself from the driving rain. A figure, tall and slender, moved with an almost ethereal grace, seemingly unaffected by the hurricane-force winds. An elven scout. He was cloaked in forest greens and browns, his bow held loosely on his back. He had 2 daggers on his hips that looked like they could cut the wind itself. His sharp eyes scanned the chaotic scene. He moved directly towards Amedria, his presence strangely calming amidst the storm.
You are Captain Amedria, correct?
The scout's voice was clear, crisp, cutting through the wind's shriek as if it were a whisper.
I was informed that your party was to arrive in the Leotre Elven Forest soon. I noticed just moments before this disturbance began, I observed a figure carrying someone out of your camp, heading northwest.
Amedria stared, rain streaming down her determined face.
A figure? Carrying the prince?
Her mind reeled. Why hadn't this scout approached before the chaos?
Who are you? Why didn't you make yourself known sooner?
The scout's expression remained impassive. His eyes seemed wise.
I am Ilarin, a scout leader for the Elven Border Patrol. My orders were explicit, Captain. Observe, but do not engage until your party is within a day's journey of our territory. My mission was to prevent any potential misunderstandings or border skirmishes.
He paused, his gaze sweeping over the ravaged camp and the panicking soldiers.
However, the disappearance of a royal ambassador under such circumstances, particularly near our lands, risked sparking a war. It required an immediate re-evaluation of my orders. This was the most opportune moment to intervene without jeopardizing the security protocols.
Amedria digested his words.
Leader, so you must have a squad?
5 of us total.
Ilarin confirmed, gesturing vaguely towards the dense tree line.
They are securing our position and preparing to track.
Amedria felt a sliver of desperate hope, but it came at the cost of Dante's terrifying ordeal.
Lead the way, Scout,
She commanded, her voice firm despite the chilling rain and the howling wind.
We need to find him, now.
Ilarin spoke with calm authority despite the battering wind.
Captain, my squad will begin tracking immediately. However...
He paused, gesturing towards the swirling chaos.
Human senses are not attuned to these conditions. The beast woman would have used this storm as cover. You would have better luck waiting until daybreak. The trails will be clearer then.
Amedria's jaw clenched. Every instinct screamed at her to pursue and rescue Prince Dante immediately. But Elleren's logic was annoyingly sound. The howling wind and downpouring rain made tracking virtually impossible, even for experienced human trackers. They'd blunder blindly into the dark, likely losing more time.
As much as I despise waiting,
Amedria conceded, her voice grim.
you are correct. We will stabilize the camp and prepare to move out at daybreak. Hopefully, by then, you will have located him.
Her frustration was a bitter taste, but she swallowed it, focusing on what made the most sense.
How strong is your squad? Are they prepared for a possible head-on fight?
Elleren smirked and crossed his arms, giving a fierce stare at Captain Amedria.
We are the vanguard of Leotre. We are prepared for any threat to the woods, Captain.
With a silent nod, he melted into the rainy night, his presence now indistinguishable from the storm itself.